downtown core, residential development, that's increased opportunities for residential development in the downtown, then parking, which we already have stated, and then the implementation plan. Where's the money going to come from? How do we get the money to do that? Those were things that were resolved at that second public engagement. During the refinement phase, internal city review of the draft plan was carried out by administration, and comments were forwarded to the consultant for the amendment of the draft plan. Next steps. Our next step now is to finalize the plan and supplemental documents, present the proposed plan and supplemental documents to GPC for final comments, which we are doing today, present the proposed plan and bylaw to council for first reading, after which there's going to be a public hearing because it's going to be adopted by bylaw on the bylaw, and then the second and third reading and adoption. That's where we are right now, and we are expecting or anticipating that by July 22nd, the final draft plan is going to be presented by the consultant to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Questions for Sam? Comments? That's good.
Your Worship, it's quite a complex project, the way I see it, and certainly what I've read. When you are trying to get many landowners together and come up with a plan that's acceptable and could be implemented, whether it's 5 years or 25 years. The one thing in the report that bothered me was the question of absentee owners and the inability to get a hold of them. I don't know what exactly that meant, but surely the tax rule would tell you who the owner was and where they get, and whether they respond or not, of course, is a different question. But I worry about if we don't have a buy-in from the owners, what are we going to do in the next 5 or 10 years? How are you going to implement this plan if the owners are not buying into it? If in fact that's the case. Maybe I'm reading something into it that's not there, but that's the way I read this latest report. And that, amongst other things, but I worry about how we're going to get some kind of consensus, and then getting the investors that will demolish, restore the land that's there, and of course the servicing cost is another story, but we can deal with that. But we can't deal with the buildings themselves, I don't think. And I just wondered where we feel we're going with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Look to administration to.
Well, thank you for the question. It's one of the major things that, if you look at the segmentation of the membership of the advisory committee, we discovered that it was a mixture of property owners and business owners, and these were people who actually populated the advisory committee. Now, those were the exact same concerns that were raised by them, that some of them who are on the committee, and those who are business owners, but they don't own the property, but somebody else owns the property, who's maybe somewhere in Florida or elsewhere, and not really giving them much care. But again, to the issue, and I think that was discussed among this advisory committee, the issue on how to deal with that, I think that will be a combined, maybe a conversation between us and the advisory committee, at least to get to a point where, because you can't force whoever doesn't want to do anything. It's impossible to force them to do it. But what we are doing this one is by preponderance of the survey that we have done and the overwhelming number of supporters, public support in terms of those who actually do home building and in the downtown, what their consent to actually having something done. And I would say the majority of them that are on the committee and outside of the committee who are part of the public engagement listing process actually did indicate that yes, that's something they want to. And if you look at the report itself, towards the end there were some things that were proposed, we have actions that are proposed. We have the build action, we have the stimulate action, and we have the innovate action. And a number of those things were based on the way they are going to be targeted. Is it going to be are we expecting the building owner to be the one who will do this, or will council in partnership, in collaboration with individuals actually get this thing done? So there's a lot of things within the report that assist to address that. Then there's the aspect of maybe that the city can do in terms of fast tracking the permitting process to ensure that thing gets done. And well, coming back to your question again, yes, I think that was one of the major focus, but again, to absent the fact that most of them that were on the committee actually supported doing this one. For those who are not there, it's tough to actually summarize how they will receive people. At least from the online survey that we did, what we are hearing is that most of them are in support of this.
Councilor Baker.
Well, just to follow up on Sam's question. Well, thank you, Sam. You know, the people are renting and leasing the property is one thing. But the people that have a say are the people who've got the title, the land, own the land. And at the end of the day, if they're absent, how many real commitments do you feel do we have downtown? That this is the right thing to do and they're prepared to invest? Do we have that kind of data, or is that too early to ask for that?
Yes, not in terms of how much of them are committed to getting this done, but in terms of who owns what, in terms of the land ownership map for the downtown, we do have that. And if you go back to what I said earlier, a lot of them, either those who are in the committee or not in the advisory committee, but actually came in and participated in the two engagement that we have put together. What the feedback we got from them is that they are in support of this. But we still do have, and I have to be honest with you, we still do have a pocket of landowners that we haven't heard anything from. How to deal with that, and I know maybe if I just base it on my past experience in the city of Messina, when things like this happen, a lot of people who are not even part of the engagement process and may not have said anything actually come on in once because they know it's going to benefit them. Because if we are improving, if there's going to be a call for an improvement of a building, at the end of the day, the value of that property will rise, and based on that economic analysis, it's going to be tough to see a landowner or a property owner who will not want develop their property to increase. If this is going to at least lead to that increase in value. What renters don't want to do is put a whole bunch of money into properties that they don't have direct interest in.
I believe Executive Manager Singh.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. One of the biggest things to remember with this plan is this sets the redevelopment plan going forward over the next 30 to 40 years. Although we may not have every single business owner or landowner in the downtown had input into this document or has supported it, it's a community initiative to move the downtown in a manner of redevelopment. So when redevelopment does occur, there's guidelines around what that looks like, what are some of the design requirements from a building perspective, how we will redevelop our roads and sidewalks and walkability, where parking will be assessed and where our green spaces will be allocated in the downtown. So it's more of an area structure plan rather than a building replacement plan, if that clarifies the question, Councilor.
Councilor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to be clear, is this the final piece of kind of stakeholder engagement that's happening? And I only ask that just because there's multiple times within this report where it said there was a lot of confusion for people who were doing the survey. In the one point, it says that there's confusion as to whether it applies to new development or existing development. So then it says that a significant number of people skipped that portion of the survey. And then the other one there's some confusion as far as whether or not it's private investment into doing some of the changes in the specific design guidelines, or whether or not it's taxpayer dollars. I'm just wondering if there's any more opportunity, or is this kind of the end of the engagement portion? Because I don't know if it's exactly the way it was worded, or just some of the context that was maybe missing for those who did the surveys. But it seems as though, to me, that's a statistically significant portion of the group that didn't complete things or had, enough confusion that it's a no within this report. So I wonder if there's an issue that needs to be dealt with prior to this going to the final stage.
Okay, just a quick answer to that, and maybe the process actually has two engagement plans within the DERC process. Now, is there going to be a need for an additional one based on what we have now in terms of outcome of those two engagements? I don't think there should. There's a need. There hasn't been a request or even any. I know there were, through one of the surveys, especially when we talk about the online survey, there were some online surveys that some questions were posed that weren't really understood, but we had an engagement afterwards in which basically all of those things were explained to everybody. So I think things have been clarified to the level that now we can feel comfortable to ask the consultant to put together the policy paper that can be presented to council. And like Don said, this is mainly going to lead to policy. And that policy, although it's a major thing, that's a policy that will actually assist us to determine not only just how we deal with the downtown or what we do in the downtown, but when those things are going to occur and what kind of actions we're going to be putting in. And that's why, if you look at the plan itself, when you look at the actions that were proposed, the build, stimulate, and activate actions, a number of them are things that the community will have to do on their own, and things that they can do in partnership with other folks, at least to get those things done. Then the purpose of just going to the first part of the question, the purpose of an area development plan is actually to work on an established area within the community where we have areas of new buildings that are going to be there and the existing building, and how we can now grow that area to ensure that it meets the objectives and the goals of the city, at least for the downtown. That's the purpose, and I think that was clarified. That's from the beginning. Okay. So the next one is going to be more like an official or a formal process, which is going to be a public hearing. That's when it gets to the first trial.
So just to follow up, if you're saying that the consultants and yourself and everyone involved in actually completing the project and experienced in this area are comfortable with the level of participation, don't have any concerns, I suppose, with the amount of misunderstanding that was going on within the survey, or there was enough follow-up afterwards that dealt with those concerns, then I suppose I'm fine with it. But my only big long-term concern would lead to some of what Councillor Baker was describing, which is not getting full buy-in because maybe some people didn't really understand what they were kind of putting their input behind if the question wasn't clear enough for such a significant percentage of the people. So
now, just to give you just a quick data. Now, out of the second engagement in reviewing, and that's the report that was given to you, more than 90% of the public who came on in, including property owners and those who are business owners, supported the vision, the principles, and the goals of the plan. Then the public realm, the way it's laid out, received varying degrees of support, but huge support, at least from those who attended. Over 60% support for the land use concept. That's what the land use concept is for each of the areas. And then we have varying degrees of support for most of the proposed land use concept and actions. That's those actions which I was talking about. That's what needs to be built in terms of timeline when we need to do that. a lot of those things are one of the things, or some of the things that were supported at this school through the engagement process in which we got the feedback from the community. So I think I'm kind of comfortable that based on the engagement that's done so far, if there's only a little more, yes, council can, or the committee can recommend that, but I feel based on what I do know, I just don't want them to go through engagement forever and nothing gets out of it. These have given us a lot more information that we needed to move on to get the policy ready.
Okay. And then Councilor, but I will ask Councilor Brewer to speak because she is on this committee.
Just a couple comments is that, first of all, I think these terms of public engagement and the opportunity for the public and the stakeholders and anyone to come has been ample compared to the city resources that we've put into this, has been quite extensive compared to any other study or any other engagement that we're doing with the public. So in terms of any other engagement, I would highly recommend against that. People have had the opportunity, whether they're a stakeholder, business owner, resident, over multiple, whether you're a snowbird, you had the opportunity in the spring to come. And as far as stakeholders, even reiterating to some people that are on this advisory committee, and even to yourself as council, I don't know if everybody completely understands what this plan is because as Dawn said, I just want to reinstate that this is a tool for our economic development department to bring in developers. This is not just saying for these business owners, it's your responsibility now, go fix your front of your facade. That's a very small portion of the entire plan. And I think that that's really important is that yes, it matters if those business owners are present, but that's really a minuscule part of the entire piece. So it is more an area structure plan for the entire area. And in terms of some of these questions where stakeholders weren't necessarily understanding the wording of the survey, I did read through the survey and it was very straightforward. So even as I'm explaining this right now, I will tell you I did have to reinstate over and over again to even just members on the advisory committee what this plan was about. Because a lot of people even in the community asked, well, why is the city spending so much money on the downtown? You know what, the city's not spending so much money on the downtown. We're just developing a plan so that our developers have options. Maybe they don't want to be in a modern area. Maybe they want to have some history. Maybe they want to be able to build residential on top of a business. And they have the opportunity to do that in this, and it's just our dev people now have that tool to take to them and say, hey, this is an option, this is an option, this is an option in all different areas of the city. So I think it's, although maybe this report said that it was somewhat confusing, it really is quite straightforward. And I think that the opportunity for communications to even just tell us was just that if you didn't, you can't really leave those pieces out, right? And I don't think it was what were you saying was the stakeholder engagement that were confused with the questions? I don't think it was a high percentage.
24%.
So I think even just this though, what is an area structure plan? So are you happy with the area structure plan? Well, if you don't know what that is, you're not going to answer, right? But they've had the opportunity, just as I'm having to reiterate right now. If you think an area structure plan is the city downtown area redevelopment plan is the city coming in and paying millions of dollars to redevelop our downtown, then you're confused, right? And no matter how many times you tell people that, sometimes they only hear what they want to hear as well. So I think that clarity has been reiterated over and over again. And I don't know at what time you say, okay, we can't reiterate anymore.
Thanks.
Just a quick,
Thanks. No, just to be clear, I don't know that I believe that another engagement needs to be done, but so long as there's some level of follow-up for those who maybe didn't fully understand, especially if you are a building owner or downtown business, something along those lines, you want to have full buy-in from that group if you can. I know it's not the end of the world because this plan's going on for a very long time and those businesses could move to a different part of the city, all sorts of things could happen over 30 to 40 years. But so long as, at least for the plan where they were, invested in, took the time to complete it, that there was some follow-up if there was some confusion. But you're telling me that there was, so, that sounds fine to me.
Councilor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that between Executive Manager Stang and Councilor Monroe, most of my thoughts have been put out there, but I just wanted to reiterate that, and correct me if I'm wrong, a major developer comes in, makes a call today, And they say we want to develop an 8-story high-rise with commercial on the bottom, residential on top. And we say, as a city who's trying to do economic development, who's trying to be proactive in things, you know, I just don't know if that fits into our plan. That's what we say today. Fair enough? Because we don't have a plan. This is the plan, right? So when this plan is completed with all the engagement, everything that comes along with it, we can then say, yes, this fits our plan, or no, it does not, and we have a definitive set of things. You go back 15 years to when I was a chamber president, we were talking about this. 15 years ago. This is as close as it's come, in my opinion, to being actually completed, where we can say, yes, you can bring that business to town because it fits into what we're doing. Is that fair?
That's fair, and that brings a lot, in fact, that's the kind of certainty this plan is supposed to provide for people, so that they don't just come on in. Now we do have, beyond this level, though, there's going to be a bylaw amendment, and level in which what is here will actually resonate in the land use bylaw, but again, to this prepares that policy that gives us a framework for determining how we're going to be doing, what type of uses we're going to be having in different areas, how public those spaces are going to be, how far do we need to extend our public space, all of those things. And areas where we don't have any open space right now, do we need to have something there that will get people together, a gathering place where they can actually engage in between coffee times and all the rest of them within the data. That's what the framework that this one is laying down to a plan. And then if the call comes to any of the councilors, they will have that definitive and say, okay, yeah, I think we can do that. At least that's something that we know is in the plan. This is supposed to set out.
Yeah, because, you know, to be honest, when this council was first elected, we delayed this project. And I was one of the ones that voted to delay it, because it had been going on and on and on and on for years in many different forms. So that's why I did what I did and voted the way I voted when I did. Being more educated on the topic now than I was then, and wanting our city to grow and prosper, I'm excited that we're this close, and all the work that's gone into it. And it's going to lay that roadmap going forward. So I see nothing but good things coming from this. Yes, no matter what plan you make, we're doing a Northeast Area Structure Plan right now. You're going to get public engagement, you're going to get people that love the idea, you're going to get people that don't. And we're going to have to move on, you know, to a point, because this particular thing has been going on for 15 plus years. So thanks to everybody for all their work to getting it to this point. And I do think, I agree with Councilor Monroe, everybody's had their opportunity to come and speak to this, and I'm really, really happy that people did. So thanks for everything you guys have done to this point, and I think this does nothing but good for economic development, for future planning, for beautification, environmental standard, everything moving forward. We have a plan when this is, and we haven't had that today.
Thank you.
Councilor Monroe.
Just to reiterate for Councilor Thorson, if Dion or perhaps Sam or even communications, have we, those people that were confused with the questions, have we reached out to them in perhaps what they were confused about? Do you know?
Actually, the only area there was a little bit of confusion is on the design guidelines, not the policy aspect of this thing. That's why we have the 24% actually responding to that, because there are some, in terms of what is going to be happening inside of buildings, how buildings are supposed to look, those are things, not the deep policy issue that actually is within the land use concept. That's why I was opening up page profusely. Yes, there was some mention, but it's only in the general, what the facade is going to look like, what the general, are we having awnings, are we having canopies, those kind of things. Because some of those terminologies are terminologies that people were not familiar with, but we still had more than 24% of the respondents responding to that and providing us with answers.
Okay, perfect. I just want to ensure, because I just wanted to make sure after I thought about it that it was very specific, but perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Baker, go ahead. Over here.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the concern about downtown and the use of the word area structure plan and changing of zoning are very contentious from this aspect. The city has been rezoned, or is zoned what it is. People have bought land in that zone because of what it is. And if my memory serves me correct, the Municipal Government Act doesn't allow the city to change the zoning without the permission of the landowner. when you talk about high-rise development, I'm not sure this Chamber of Commerce issue. But when the Grandview Manor was being built, there was a request to build a 6-story or whatever it is, and it was granted. The 3 or 4 story buildings were the 3, I'm not sure, the 3 or 4, the ones that the Ramey family built. There was no problem getting those built. There was the building that's called the Saskatchewan building. There's no problem getting that built. I've never seen a request for over 3 or 4 stories in my life except for the Philstar building. I think what we need to do, I need a refresher, and probably council does, with the downtown core, and look at the zoning and what's allowed. Because I'm not sure we all understand, and I'm not sure I do anymore, what's allowed down there. I used to know really well. But has there been any request to do any of this kind of stuff that's different? The last one I heard of was one just by City Hall, or where are we? Just to the north of City Hall here. And next to the Leckie building, there was a permit taken out, or at least a development permit, taken out for 5 or 6 stories. I'm not sure what it was, but I stand to be corrected. And nothing's happened. And it wasn't because it was turned down. It was allowed. It was because Economic Times probably, I would guess, slowed that project. So I think what we need to do, at least I'm one of them, that need to be re-educated with the downtown. If we're going to try and deal with detail of the planning and zoning and area structure plan, I got to know all over again how that works. Because an area structure plan, in my mind, that I've always known it, in the private world and the public world, you take a piece of raw land and you plan an area structure, and then from there you build. But after it's built, then you're going to change it into an area structure plan. I'm not quite sure how you do that. So, in your worship, somewhere in the process, I think it'd be worth us getting a briefing to update on that, because I'm confused now. Thank you.
We'll take that note away with the administration. Appreciate those comments, Councillor. I think that, to answer the question briefly, is I don't think we've had those developments come forward saying we'd like to propose this.
No,
And I think this is where the intention, going back to this whole redevelopment downtown, what would downtown look like? What could it look like? And I think that's
and what can we legally
and
do?
what, and exactly, and at other times, indeed, staying within the laws that are present. But if someone was to come forward and say we'd like to rezone a particular piece of property from whatever to include residential in a high rise, because I think that's the question we're seeing. And I don't think it sounds
It's a good idea.
but there's no question we've seen downtowns in major cities go through this, and one of the there's things that our downtown doesn't have that would certainly help foster people staying downtown. I think the grocery store is a primary corner holding block from that perspective. But yeah, Sam, I think that's what we're seeing is that I'm reading into the planning world a little bit from what I read, that as redevelopment happens, it's not just simple residential.
You're absolutely correct. It's not just simple residential. And that's just going back to the question from, or the comment by Councillor Baker. When we started this process, the major focus of the team was actually to lay that groundwork. The template upon which everything we're building now is built upon is what is currently happening downtown now. Now, the purpose of an area development plan is not to down zone anywhere. It's actually more or less to up zone, to fill a vision, because we are here now, or we want to be here. How do we get there? That's why I said for most building or property owners, it's a bonus for them to actually get to where this one is going to take them based on the vision that they have. So the issues were very thoroughly discussed, and we discussed that one with the advisory committee too, and that was presented as part of the initial ideas that came in from O2, just looking at each of the context of the downtown and where things are happening, where we have commercial almost everywhere, and the downtown now is, I would say, it's direct control. And because they're direct control, they're C1, kind of C1 in context, in terms of you can get up to 30 meters, and that's about eight stories in the downtown. I haven't seen anybody apply for anything getting close to that beyond the seniors apartment we have down there, and maybe another one there. But again, too, it's not where we are right now. It's where we want to be in 15 years. That's where this is feeling. So we are not done doing anything. It's just making sure that at least what is there now is accommodated, but it's expanded so that all the gaps we have within the downtown, how do we fill that up to make sure that we have a context that when somebody goes through the downtown, actually is an enduring shopping environment where we have residences, where we have young families, we have older gentlemen. Actually, one of the things that came out of our survey is that 65% of the people who are downtown are older than 64. Now, how do we regenerate that? Because generally the engine that drives the downtown is the energy that the younger folks bring into downtown. How can we do that? It's only going to be through maybe innovative housing or residential district development that will target them, and then the things that we want to see in close proximity to where they are, which we take them, at least make them stay in the downtown rather than going shopping outside. Those are the kind of things, because I know it's people who are living downtown that actually will generate that energy before you have other people coming in. Then there's the historical component. From 1903 to where we are right now, there's been a lot of things. Then, there's going to be some historical artifacts, maybe murals or something that actually announces to people that yes, this is downtown, Rochester, we're proud of it. These are history. So many of those things are within this, but they are supported by policy to be able to allow City Hall to actually be able to do something about it and develop that in a way that is going to complement our, what do we call it now, the survey beacons that we have here that actually that contributes to the fact that the city of Rochester is a very unique city in the whole of Canada.
Thank you, Your Worship. This isn't meant to change anything that I've said so far. I just know that I read one part of this slightly backwards, and that was just on the design guidelines. It was actually only 24% online that responded, which means 76% didn't respond. Now, I am hoping that that's because they just didn't really have that much interest in the subject, and most of the people that were really engaged likely went in person, checked all the charts, made sure they were really bought into what they were seeing and went in person. I can't recall the questions, but I just hope it wasn't as a result of the survey. But what you're telling me so far is that you don't believe that that's true, and I'm comfortable with that. So thank you.
Is that up around? Any other comments? I'll just add the Activate Actions page, and I'm looking on page 13 of the report, farmers market, bringing it downtown. I think that's a huge activity that can be done relatively cheaply. Working with the city and the farmers market locally, I think that the respondents responded, 187 people indicated that the respondents of that group, that this was an area, as well as the food truck program. I know there are various food trucks in town, and I think that with working with the downtown, working with the city administration, bringing those trucks in, certainly from that time of the farmers market as an example, from early May till late mid-October, with the produce is available. I think we can get some action, just some quick hits, as they say, without resulting in extensive expense, ripping up streets and relighting and redesigning things. Those are items working with the downtown businesses, working with the city, determining what street would fit that mill, and putting it to go, getting it going. I think this is one of those actions that people have wondered. When you do a study, what's the potential? I think there's two real quick hits, and those are the top two hits right off the top. So I think there's opportunities here to take this survey and put it into action once it's completed and approved through council. But I think that it won't be one that simply stands on the shelf and gathers dust. I think this will lay some groundwork, and as quick as we can get some action moving so that the wheels start to turn on the bus. Any other comments? Not seeing. Thank you very much, Sam. And thank you to the committee and the staff. I think it's both a huge thank you that should be noted to the Steering Advisory Committee. Councilor Monroe sits on that committee, as well as the staff in planning and engineering who worked very diligently with O2, and thank you for that, because at the end of the day, we'll have a report that we're very proud of and we'll be able to put to use. Moving on to 4.2, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 4.2, Lloydminster Junior 8 Bobcats rental agreement, I'll ask Jim Walter to come forward.
So I'm here to speak today about the Junior 8 Bobcats Hockey Association rental agreement. The Bobcats had a 5-year rental agreement, has expired. Administration has worked with the Junior 8 Bobcats Association to create a new 5-year rental agreement, 2020-2024, which is structured very similar to the past agreement. Once signed, the new agreement will provide the association with an updated pricing structure, rates to concessions, snack machines, team locker room, and sponsorship opportunities within the Civic Center arena. The new agreement will include primetime youth rate for games and practices during evenings and weekends, school rate for daytime practice, spring camps, fieldhouse rental, youth summer ice rental, June 1st to August 31st for fall selection camp, conditioning camps, and hockey schools, student rates for Service Sports Center gym memberships, and Civic Center auditorium 1-hour meetings, which will be charged at an hourly rate. The above rates do not include GST and will increase as rental fee prices increases. New agreement outlines specific dates for the Junior 8 Bobcat Spring Camp, which will occur at the Service Sports Center. So really the changes to this agreement from the past one really is allowing them to have some rights on the snack machines, as well as we've made a small adjustment to their practices during the day. We'd be charging them school rate like we did in the past agreement, but if they're going to be in the evening or on the weekend where they're taking up time from other hockey associations, then they'd pay the same rate as they would. As well, another change is the spring camp. So in the past, it was that the spring camps would have to be at the Civic Center, which made us sometimes keep the Civic Center open an extra 3 weeks just for their spring camp. With this agreement, they'd be moving to the Service Sports Center. We could actually close that rink down earlier, depending on playoffs and that kind of thing. So options, administration to bring the Junior 8 Bobcats rental agreement to an upcoming regular council meeting, or 2, administration to bring further information to an upcoming governance and priorities committee meeting. I'm free to ask any questions you may have.
Thanks, Sean. Councilor Buckland.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Joe. In keeping with fair, transparent, and equitable to all, I have to ask, because I don't know. What's the agreement with the Bandits? Because that's another group that's, in my opinion, just as similar as the Bobcats. So I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, the Bandits, their agreement has also expired, and we are working through their agreement as well. Very similar. The Bobcats use a lot of ice time during practices during the day, where the Bandits is completely during their primetime rates. So it's really now with adding that cost to the Bobcats that if they also do the practice outside of those school hours, they will be charged the same rate.
You know, the Bandits will practice at 10 p.m. at the Civic a lot of time, right? So late night guys, a little different group of kids. But as we're going through this, I was just wondering where the Bandits agreement was, and if we're going to try and have some synergies between those two and not recreate the wheel and make it fair to both parties, so that one can't say we gave one more to the other. So I just wanted to make sure we were cognizant of that fact.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, a lot of it has to do with sponsorship as well. There's only so much sponsorship to be given. So this agreement allows the Bobcats to sell the majority of the sponsorship at the Civic Center, but we are trying to give some to the Bandits.
Yeah, those things are different between the groups. I get that, but as far as the city offering of rates and times and so on and so forth, I'd like to see those be as similar as humanly possible to both groups for sure. That's just my opinion.
Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. So if I remember correctly, it was within the within this last agreement, we adjusted at least facility rates at some point. I don't know if it was specifically rink, but I know there was different facility rates, but were ice times and things like that adjusted as well at the time?
I think they may have been adjusted very early on during this council. I'm not.
Yeah.
But what this agreement does is everything, so that when we increase those rates, these rates automatically increase.
Oh, okay.
So the prime time rate, that's a rate that we have, so as that increases, the rate increases, that's the same as school.
It's subject to the rate that's in place when it's in place. It's
Absolutely.
not at the beginning of the agreement.
Absolutely.
Okay. My only concern is if there's a significant change from the last time that the agreement was written, that just to make sure that there's been, communication with the Bobcats, because I believe they run as more or less a not-for-profit. So you don't want to throw too many surprises and sticker shock their way, and we don't want to do that either. So just so long as you've been communicating back and forth and that there's not too many surprises with some of these adjustments as far as making sure that they're paying the correct rate for the correct time. It seems like you guys have done your homework, so thanks.
Well, certainly the Civic Center is, or the Centennial Civic Center is the mainstay for events. And we know our community and economic development and other organizations are trying things such as the ESSO Cup. We're running the ESSO Cup in hope for the future. How does this contract deal with the Bobcats running their organization and being in a JHL team that's destined for playoffs? How do we manage that? Is that covered in the contract?
Yeah, for all our rental agreements that the city has with all association, we do have clauses in there about special events and making sure that we have the right to cancel. Of course, we give them as much time as possible, but all our agreements allow that.
Great, that's just, I use the ESSO Cup as one example, but I had other events, because certainly we would love to host as many events as we can, but at the same token, we want to make sure we've covered off our bases. We've given our regular renters, and in this case, the Bobcats, as much notice as possible, and have that into the contract. That it works both ways, because it's beneficial for the Bobcats program to enhance hockey in this community, so.
Absolutely, with the ESSO Cup, I know that that committee's been working with the Bobcats from day one and making sure that they understand each other's schedules and how to work things out, and administration has helped where we could.
Very good, excellent. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you very much, Joel.
Thank you.
Moving on to 4.3, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 4.3, former Martin Brown School Site Area Redevelopment Plan. I'll ask Dan Robson from Economic Development to come forward.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, councilors.
Good afternoon, Dan.
Here today to provide you with a quick update on the former Martin Brown School Site Area Redevelopment Plan. First, as a point of clarity, I believe this was first presented to council was the King Connect Area Redevelopment Plan. The reason for the name change on our end was because administration is open and viewing this as a blank canvas, and we want this to be driven by public consultation. So we didn't want King Connect Park to be leading the public in any way that this area should be a park or shouldn't be a park. So we just want to keep it as open and not biased as we possibly could. So that's the reason for that. As you'll note in the IR, that the bid process, tendering process has closed, and we are actually going through our final scoring right now. So we'll look to have letters of award and letters of regret roll out actually this week. The budget for this project is budgeted at $100,000, and at this point, the administration is confident that we will be under budget moving forward. We're looking for timelines playing out as proposed. That's kind of August, mid-August, we'll be having our first touch point for public consultation. Other than that, it'll be all decided on the proper timeline at the kickoff meeting. At this point, would there be any questions that council would have?
Council Speaker.
Just, excuse me, just one, Your Worship. Thank you, Dan. In your report, you say the site's wide open to any kind of development, but there will be parking reserved for the Archie Bell Arena.
That would be a part of the whole area redevelopment plan, but that if we go down one page, we can show them the map, and you can see that that working with
I guess what I'm just saying,
Yes.
Archie Miller needs some parking rather than the back alley.
Yes, part of this project will be reviewing all the studies that have been done and are currently taking place on the facilities there, the outdoor pool and Archie
Just
Miller.
tell me you're planning some parking.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was an easy one, Dan. Yes, more, maybe. City Manager.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there is money in the 2019 budget for to put in for additional parking. We just haven't started that project yet because we wanted this process to kick in
I'm
first.
sure it was all there, I just want to make sure. I hear quite a bit about it. I live not far from there.
A potential widening of that access, is that included in the parking?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Begg.
Dan, are they, as far as folks that have already put in or shown interest, is the process for them to approach the city again, or are you going to be approaching those that have already shown some interest in that plan?
Yeah, as kind of part of being here today is to kind of get the kickoff on the public being aware of what's going on and when we're coming forward. But we'll be identifying stakeholders as well as, I believe, residents within X meters of this area will receive a mail out and going down public consultation with them as well as open to the public as a whole. So the exact details of everything from the public consultations haven't been done yet, because as I said, we haven't actually awarded this project yet. So that'll be coming forward later.
Any other questions or comments? I think this is been long waited for by a lot of people, certainly the residents of that area, users of the Arch Miller, as well as the neighbors across the street. So I think that we'll look forward to this coming forward to council and moving down the road.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Moving on to 4.4.
Thank you, Worship. To present 4.4, engineering's Q2 capital infrastructure projects update. I'll ask Shane Rogers to come forward.
I just want to say that depending on the nature of which project we're talking about, I may step out at that time if I feel there's a conflict. Just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, James.
Before you is the information report for the Engineering Q2 Capital Infrastructure Project Update. So the topic, as I said, is just to provide Council and administration with an update on where we are at with our 2019 capital infrastructure programs. The information reports follows very closely to the Q1 report that we've done, or we put together, so I'll just proceed to the report that's at the back. It follows a very similar format where we have our at a glance, which gives some project expenses to date, and basically a brief synopsis of where we are at with the program. And then the following pages provide a further breakdown, intent of the program, where we are at status-wise, and then what services we need to procure. So with that, I will turn it over to Mayor and Council to basically ask any questions of engineering services with respect to our capital infrastructure programs.
Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, James. Just because I'm curious, because I was out cleaning out storm drains on Thursday night, I wondered how the upgrades on the north end of town handled the flash flood that we had on Thursday night, because we've done some improvements in that area. Do you know if there was an improvement in how that all flowed?
Yes, thank you for your question. So we did see an increase in capacity or serviceability with the northwest drainage channel. The flow starting at 57th Street crossing, which is the entrance to Lakeland Estates or Lloydminster Estates. That system flowed quite well out into Breckle Lake, where the surcharging of that lake was noticeably reduced as it flowed out towards the northeast or down 67th Street.
Yeah, I just wondered that Conroe Corner across from Breckle Lake had been infamous for some collections, so I just wondered if that had alleviated some of the problem.
And as far as I know, it has alleviated or assisted in alleviating that concern.
I think that the challenge again Thursday was simply where we get a gush of rain, no matter where we are in the city. The system is built to design, but sometimes with the challenges of garbage, litter, grass cuttings, and things like that, drains plug very easily. And I know our operations team stepped up as always to try and alleviate it as best as we can and encourage homeowners to take that time. If you notice garbage before a big storm in front of your drains, please help us out, because it's to your advantage as well as the city's. I know people really believe it's the city's responsibility to keep the streets clean, it is, but it also helps when citizens assist, certainly, because litter blows, litter is deposited on a regular basis. Thought this would be a good time to put in a plug about that, because I know talking to various landowners, they said, oh, I went out and just gathered up the stuff, and I said, thank you, because we just can't be everywhere at once.
Yes. Mayor, thank you for your comment on that.
We can clean one day and 2 days later, it'll be back again, so.
Yes, thank you for your comment on that. And with those rainstorms that we had for the past 2 years on June 9th and then last week on Thursday, those flash floods with that high intensity, they don't have that ability to soak in and infiltrate the ground. It's just here and it needs to run off. So it picks up grass and debris, and that all makes an issue within our catch basin. So if you do notice something backing up in your catch basin, it takes a simple shovel, as long as you're safe, watching for traffic, and don't fall in the thing. It'll go a long way to protecting your own property and improving flow.
So if I could ask James a couple items, you've got, I think it's important for people to realize on the bottom as I look down, you actually have engineering work scheduled for this year in Q3. So if people see 2020 water and sewer replacement program, we're not digging up any roads, starting going in the fall and leaving them all winter. It's actually, we're going to be doing some engineering work, correct?
Yes, correct. So we on here we have the 2020 street improvement program and the 2020 water and sewer replacement program, and these two were included in the 2019 budget in order to give engineering services that leg up. We're forecasting going into next year's budgeting season, as well as programs so that we can put together our bid documents. We can get the planning process done, any permits required, notifications to Alberta Highways, Sask Highways, other stakeholders, and just prepare for the next construction season to help the contractor complete the programs within the construction season that we have available.
One other item I'd like to add, James, in the next report, if possible, is another column. You've got the expected work start, which I appreciate very much, Q1 through Q4, would be the intended completion quarter. So as an example, the drainage channel, and I know it's going to carry over for a ways, but just so that people know that, they're starting in 2, they should be finished in 3, or starting in 1, finished in 2. Just to give some people some ideas that way from that direction. And if there's going to be a year extension, just put a little asterisk into it, something like that, so that it helps people as we're explaining to the taxpayers, well, when are you guys getting started? When are we going to get finished? It's a great summary. I like it very much, but I think if we could add that one piece, I think it would add to the value for the taxpayers.
Excellent comment.
Any other comments, Councilor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks again, James. Just some comments I received the other day that I thought might be pertinent here to this. 47th Ave, we started ripping it up the other day.
Yes.
Has there been any thought to traffic calming in that area? I only ask because I had a resident stop me on Sunday and say that they have had their children out front and playing, and people are really speeding down 40th Street to get back to 48th Ave because the signage that's up there, and we've got it cut off at 41st Street, so you can go up to 41st and cut across, but people can't see that that's open there. So it seems that all of the traffic is going down 40th Street from 47th Ave west to 48th, and they were quite concerned about, it's going to be a considerable amount of time that we have that street torn up. So just something I wanted to bring up on their behalf is that they were concerned about the speed and the safety of children in the area of 40th Street.
Okay, thank you for your question. So just so that I'm clear, that is during construction, they're looking for additional traffic calming or traffic signage.
Yeah.
Okay. We will work with our contractor, who's Rustway Construction, and our project team, and we will see what we have within our existing traffic accommodation plan and our signage plan, and see if we can make amendments and tweaks as those documents are fluid. Traffic and construction are fluid items, so we'll definitely take those concerns and see if we can improve on a process.
Yeah, it was interesting because on 39th Street, it's a playground zone for most of it. So people have been avoiding that street so they don't have to go 30. And they're coming up a block and speeding through that area rather quickly. So just interesting that it was a comment that came to me within 2 days of the project start. So people have noticed it immediately.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have this number right off the top, James, but I'm doing a quick math. We're almost spending $8 million on items that relate to stormwater and improved drainage in our community. Does that sound about right? From the Neely starting backwards, the Neely Edmonds storm system control, the drainage improvements at 75th, just looking at the sanitary main, because there'll be some work done there, the drainage channel improvement for almost 600,000, as well as the work we've done at the drainage channel improvements, northwest drainage for $4 million. We're spending almost $8 million dealing with water. That's
Yes.
just on the surface.
Yep. I don't have those numbers in my head, but it sounds appropriate. We are spending quite a lot of time, effort, and money on stormwater improvements and capacity upgrades within our systems. As you mentioned, our 2019 water and sewer replacement program, it does have a stormwater approach to it as well, or a component to it as well, that we are looking to improve on the capacity.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that's the message that we need to send back to our residents and businesses. We are trying to deal with the surface water issues that deal from events. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. I was about to bite my tongue, but events that happen naturally occurring from that perspective. So I appreciate that. And, we'll continue to support that as best we can through the budgetary process, because I think it's important that people see value, and by affecting less flooded basements and things like that, they appreciate that. So it's a benefit to the whole community. Any other comments or questions? I guess we'll pray for rain, just enough to keep the projects wet, but not too wet, so we can get construction done this season on time.
Yes, thank you for that. And then just one last closing remark. With our 2019 water and sewer replacement program, as Councillor Buckingham noted or alluded to, we do have 47th Avenue closed currently between south of 44th Street and 41st Street or 40th Street. Starting tomorrow, we will be closing down Highway 16 to 44th Street, just so that everybody here is aware. We have done our pre-construction signage, we've done our pre-construction advertising, we've reached out to the Alberta government, Saskatchewan government, Highway Hotline, SGI Permitting Office, as well as local media outlets to make everybody aware as much as possible. But I thought I would take this opportunity to identify that as well. We are looking for it to be a fairly short-term closure, 14 days. I know that doesn't seem short, but in the grand scheme of construction, we're hoping that is short. So, thank you.
Well, we hope we can keep it as short as we can, James. I know your team and the contractor will be working to ensure that it's kept as short as possible. You can keep the inconvenience down, but I think, as I said before, we don't fix in construction season. It's broken all through the winter season, so
that's right.
Hopefully people will bear with us and get through this as we can. If there's nothing else, thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 4.5.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 4.5 firefighting equipment donation to Nikki Pool Ukraine. I'll ask Chief Newton to come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me here today.
Good afternoon, Chief.
So today I'm here to talk about an opportunity we have for a firefighting equipment donation to Nikopol, Ukraine. So firefighting equipment used by fire services in North America have defined lifespans. These lifespans are dictated by industry standards such as the National Fire Protection Association and manufacturer specifications. An example of this would be firefighting helmets. Firefighting helmets can only be used for 10 years after the date of manufacturing, and fire services uses the NFPA standards on equipment to determine and schedule its life cycle. The replacement schedule leaves the department with equipment that is no longer usable in accordance with North American fire service industry standards. There is an opportunity to donate the life cycle equipment to departments internationally. These departments are in need of more modernized firefighting equipment. and Ukraine is one such country that has struggled to outfit emergency responders. Administration has identified a partnership with the organization Firefighters Aid Ukraine, which partners with fire services throughout Canada to ship life-cycle fire service equipment to the Ukraine. Firefighters Aid Ukraine is an Alberta organization that is dedicated to improving the emergency responder capabilities in the Ukraine. The organization will be shipping a sea container to the Ukraine and is willing to take the City of Lloydminster Fire Services life-cycle equipment specifically to Nickel, our city's sister city. This donation aligns with the intent of the sister city agreement between the cities and will not only improve the bond between two great communities a world apart, but it may also be used to save lives of residents and first responders in Nickel. A list of outdated equipment for donation. We have 14 pass alarms, 21 sets of firefighting jackets, 22 sets of firefighting pants, 22 pairs of firefighting boots, 26 structural firefighting helmets, 15 pairs of firefighting gloves, 21 self-contained breathing apparatus, and 20 SCBA masks. Our options today is that committee accept the report as information, or two, that the committee request more information to be brought back to committee at a later GPC meeting.
Thank you, Chief. Questions, comments? Councilor Beckman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for the presentation, Chief. I got about $111,000 worth of product here. I guesstimated at full replacement value. So, although I appreciate the fact that we have a sister city in the Ukraine and that this stuff can go there, I wanted to bring up for discussion purposes, because that's what this meeting is, what about right here at home? There are a lot of departments that don't have the ability to buy these things and or keep up with the NFPA standard for it. Have we considered or looked around? I know I can speak from previous experience where I've taken outdated equipment and put it to services within the province of Saskatchewan that were super appreciative of that because they weren't so stuck on the rules of using this equipment past its date, but it actually enhanced the stuff that they had that was way past this date. So as much as I can appreciate helping those around the world, I just wondered if any consideration had been given to helping those small places at home that could benefit from this same donation.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So there was a thought brought up to donate domestically. We also looked at this a number of years ago before we made a donation to the Philippines. There's a certain amount of liability exposure we put on our city by donating gear that is no longer usable in North America. If a person of their service was to get injured, we do have a certain amount of exposure.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I wondered, just my thought for it. However, I wondered through legal somehow if there was a way to excuse ourselves of the liability for helping somebody else out. It's something I simply just wanted to bring up for discussion and have that conversation today. So,
absolutely, and there's nothing I'm aware of that we can do to mitigate our exposure risk.
Councilor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Given that this is likely not the first time this has happened, I'm just curious, what has the city done in the past with its light-duty equipment?
Thank you, Councillor. So a number of years ago, over a decade, we used to donate our gear domestically. That's before I think everywhere started having a full understanding of what our exposure risks were. Our last donation we made, I believe it was in 2015 when I became fire chief. We donated a bunch of outdated gear to Tarlac, Philippines. They were in desperate need of firefighting equipment, and there they happened to, a lot of their tools they hand make. So getting a gear donation from us drastically improved their service, and I've been in contact with them since, and they've been able to utilize it and drastically improve their organization. It's the same with why we're going with the Ukraine. Something I wasn't aware of until quite recently. Ukraine has some of the worst firefighter death rates in all the world, as well as resident death rates in fires. I did take a look at some of their firefighting gear that they use in Ukraine. The one I saw was more consistent with welding equipment, just thin leathers, and they wear a metal helmet. which, if you know anything about heat, metal is not the thing you want to wear.
Councillor Baker.
Your worship, I always have trouble with these equipment and trucks and equipment that wear out on a certain day. You know, a truck, like for the truck is 10 years and then it's no good. And I really have trouble with that. But in here it says, and I'm wondering which law forces us to do this. It said in here, the North American Fire Service industry standards. It's not usable in accordance with North American Fire Service industry standards. Now, what jurisdiction does the North American Fire Service industry standard have? Like, who's the law? Isn't it CSA?
Chief.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. A lot of our laws for industry, the laws, the provincial laws come from OHS. Industry standards, they work with manufacturers to set those lifespans and everything like that. OHS is our law that we have to abide by.
Well, it's certainly to the manufacturer's advantage if every 10 years you're going to throw everything in the garbage. You know, they build a product the last 10 years and then you throw it in the garbage. There's something wrong with that. And I just wondered where the Canadian standards is, which I always thought was one of the major approval of equipment industry in Canada, which I just CSA proved it isn't. You can get a propane tank and you can have it recertified for $10. And have we ever looked into that to see if we could do that? Like, a fire jacket is either wore out or it's burned off your back. I can understand some of this stuff, but I don't even know what it is. But I'm just wondering, because we've got into this society of throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. And what is the evidence to say you should throw it away? You probably, after one fire, some of that stuff you could probably throw it away if it happened to be in the wrong place with the wrong fireman at the wrong time, the right fireman at the wrong time. So I'm just wondering if we really cover our bases, or we're just saying because North American Fire Services say that's the standard, that's what we do.
Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It's much to I would rather everything last a lot longer. Unfortunately, I can't set out those industry standards. We just have to outfit our firefighters with the PPE, and they determine the lifespans, the manufacturers with those NFPA guidelines, or regulations, sorry. So there's nothing I'm aware of, especially for these items that are on there, where we can do another inspection, another test to keep them around. I can use our SCBA's, our self-contained breathing apparatus. You'll see them there, the packs we wear on our back to breathe in fires. The ones that we're donating to Ukraine, or proposing, it's they're the ones that have a big rubber hose that come off the mask, you know. Those have been taken out of service for, they were one of the ones I wore last. I was one of the last ones to wear them. So I think we haven't used them since 2010 in our community, since they updated the standards, because you can't have those on your face, because you end up, there's been cases of firefighters getting tangled in fires.
I guess I'm saying the real inspection, half it might be junk after a year, but it doesn't all come bad in 10 years. That's all I'm saying. So I'll leave it in your capable hands, and it'll be interesting to see what CSA has to say about this.
I think Councillor Fike, and I'll let Councillor White again, because he certainly is very familiar with this, becomes a liability factor. And I go back to smoke
for who's your
for
worship?
the municipality. So
But who's making it a liability?
the insurance industry. So if a firefighter...
Do they have jurisdiction over government regulations?
Well, they help set regulations, Councillor. They help set regulations based on legal precedents. Excuse me. So as an example, when we go back to...
We were forced to kind of join the National Fire Program. We had a lot of concerns about the National Fire Program because of some of those standards.
Well, the standards that have been imposed over a period of time, and I use the example of smoke heaters that firefighters at one time ran into buildings without breathing apparatus. They basically had a leather coat and a metal hard hat and fought fires. Technology has improved. That's what's resulted in it. There's the liability factor then becomes a point, because if we send someone in, be it a volunteer or a professional firefighter, as a full-time firefighter, into a facility without properly giving the equipment that could potentially fail. And we know that. That leaves us in a no different than on a construction site not providing adequate safety equipment. I think we go back to the days when roofers didn't wear harnesses. Today, it's a standard. So I think we've seen a number of changes. I don't agree either with you completely. Fire equipment may have been in very few fires in 10 years, but because of manufacturers. I've seen fire trucks that have had less than 10,000 miles on them reach their 20-year fire life and said they won't be certified. And it's a challenge that we have. The industry through, and I'm throwing the insurance companies throwing one under the bus on this, that they're setting the standard. And I'd look to Councillor Buckingham, am I on the right track on that?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. There's lots to it. I mean, you look at me, I'm 21 years in. I'm on my third set of gear. So you say that a set of gear lasts 10 years. I had to throw a set away. You know why? It did its job. It saved me. Gone, right? So it does happen from time to time. Gear wears out, but I mean, you think about vapors and that kind of stuff, that there's only a certain amount of protection that a set of gear can offer you over so many years. So, and I would always err on the side of caution, because the worst thing I never have to do is go home and tell somebody's wife because we cheaped out on gear, or, for my guys, or whatever that would be. Something I ever have to say. So it comes with a cost, it comes with a standard. Those standards are highly investigated and have been set, and they're not just a one-minister issue, and we're not going to change the world here today. We can dislike it as much as we want, but I believe in those standards for a reason. So we're bound by it, and it's a good thing. Although it's expensive and it sucks to a point, it's a good thing.
Of course.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just curious, just on this specific equipment, is there any specific health concerns or anything like that from any of this equipment that, its usage so far would be a concern for someone using it in another country or anything like that? Could it have been in any specific kind of fire where it presents any kind of danger, or all of them have been checked out and we're fully okay with it, or it's just such an upgrade from what they've been using at this point that it's not really a huge concern? Just in case there's, I don't know, you go into some fires and there's chemicals and things like that that are definitely not good for you, and they don't necessarily leave your clothing there, you see. So I was just curious about that.
Well, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, none of the gear that we're looking to donate has any specific inherent dangers right now as we ship it. There's no contamination that other than your common fire contamination, but there's no chemicals or anything like that that would make me think that there's any inherent risk to our receiver of the equipment.
Okay, perfect. And I just wanted to make one other comment. In general, I think it's there's no other kind of use for us for it. It's not doing anything here. And if somebody else could benefit from it, whether it's our sister city in the Nikopol, whether it's another community, if that was possible, at the end of the day, that's not a huge concern to me as to where it's going. But if I know that this is going to get potentially a second life that can be an improvement in the safety of the members of another department, and it's otherwise really no use to us here, then I think that's an improvement. As far as the standards and things like that, I think the standards are what the standards are. You run into that in every industry, and you have no control over it, but at the end of the day, it helps save people's lives, and I think that's the part that's important, and you want to stay on the err on the side of caution as far as those things, and you're asking people to take on a tremendous amount of risk to help our community, so you want to give them all the tools to be able to have success in doing that. So, thank you.
I'll just make a comment that I think you've obviously done your research in terms of the need in this other country. And it's no different than a medical mission where you take expired medical supplies from our country that are still in packaging that have never been used, but they're expired so they're not up to our standard here in Canada, and you take them to another country. So whether that's Guatemala or Philippines, and if we have this opportunity to help out another country, I would disagree with Councillor Buckingham. I do think we are changing the world just a little bit, right? So we are making things better by making certain decisions, and for me, if we can give it a second life, obviously Canada has certain standards, and you're the professional in this area, and I think for you to say that these are not good for up to our standards, we have to ensure that we have the proper equipment for our employees, and not wanting to take on that liability as a city, giving them to someone else in our country, even if they can't afford it. I wouldn't want to put any liability on our community as a whole to be responsible if anything did happen. So sending that over there, and if it's light years beyond what they have for equipment, I think that really, it sounds to me like you think that this is in the best interest, and we might as well put that stuff to use. So thank you for the effort that you put into it and for bringing it to us today.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we did explore many options with this. Domestically, there are certain organizations that look at surplus firefighting equipment, things that departments don't no longer need but are still within usable lifespans, and they look to distribute that equipment. It's going to drastically improve that organization in Ukraine. Actually, in this organization, Firefighter Aid Ukraine wasn't originally making a stop in Nikopol until I talked to them, and now they are going to make a specific stop just for us.
Yeah, great job on that. I was wondering if it's a great gesture on behalf of Lloyd to help their sister city like that. And I'm wondering, would there be any other departments in the region that might want to participate in that as well? Has that been checked out with any of the other counties or RMs?
Absolutely. Actually, this organization started with a firefighter from Edmonton, and lots of organizations from Alberta are sending equipment over there. That is the big push right now, is to send it over to the Ukraine. Prior to Ukraine coming about, a lot of our firefighting equipment and apparatus were going to South America, Mexico, Guatemala, all those countries, and now we're making a big push internationally. Even some of our fire service leaders in our province have been going over to Ukraine and helping them set up their fire service. Rotary's been a big part of that.
Sorry, just one follow-up comment. I'm not sure how clear it was, but of course I'm about helping people in our own country first. And that would be the initial response, is if there was someone next door that could use it, that would be obviously optimal. However, that doesn't sound like it is even an option, so this would be the next best option for me. So, thanks.
Chief, I'll just add my comments. I think that, thank you very much for reaching out to Nikopol. I think that there's things that we talked about at this table as council when we entered the sister city agreement, and that we weren't going to use taxpayers' money that it would be good value. I think this is as good a value as you could get by simply using the assets that have reached a point in their life that they would be disposed of. Appreciate, like you say, they would end up in a landfill potentially, and that's a hazardous, it doesn't do the landfill any good. And, to reach out to our sister city and provide something like this, I think is terrific. I commend you for doing that, and once you're ready to do that, if that's where we end up going, please let me know and I'll reach out to the mayor and just share that with him, and from that perspective, because I think that as you say, there's been work done in Alberta. There's certainly a strong relationship between Ukraine and many Albertans, and certainly I think that if there's things they can help back in their motherland, as it's referred to sometimes, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for the gesture and the information provided. I think we've had good questions from council today. We can certainly, moving on to the agenda, to number 5, governance and priorities matters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Planning and Development is here today to discuss the proposed amendment to Bylaw 59, 2011, known as the City of Lloydminster Building Bylaw. The intent of this amendment is to align the City of Lloydminster with current practice in Alberta and Saskatchewan, as well as to align our bylaw with the most current and applicable legislation. Because of the Lloydminster Charter, the City of Lloydminster is one of very few municipalities in Canada which has the authority to legislate their own building code. Generally, building code is regulated provincially, and municipalities are required to comply as amendments are made. Currently, Bylaw 59, 2011 regulates that the City of Lloydminster enforce the 2005 National Building Code. As of current date, the County of Vermilion River is regulated by the 2019 Alberta Building Code, which came into effect on April 1st of this year. Additionally, they also fall within the regulations of the 2017 National Energy Code. Both RMs in Saskatchewan are regulated by the 2015 National Building Code and the 2017 National Energy Code. It is our understanding that the 2019 Alberta Building Code created a more organized document with very few variances from the 2015 National Building Code. The National Building Code is the model building code. Provinces can choose to adopt their own based on their own provincial uniquenesses. As an overall body, the National Building Code is issued by the National Research Council of Canada. As for the 2017 National Energy Code, it is enforced on both sides of the border. Currently, the City of Lloydminster does not enforce an energy code. The City of Lloydminster is constantly striving to achieve the highest level of standards possible. This bylaw amendment will align the City of Lloydminster with current practice in both Alberta and Saskatchewan. Best practices in resident safety are the driving forces behind this proposed change. Planning and Development has engaged with stakeholders and members of the development community in regards to this change since spring 2017. Discussion was had whether the city would like to transition to the Alberta Building Code or stay consistent. The city already enforces the 2015 National Fire Code and the 2015 National Plumbing Code. Therefore, a transition to the 2015 National Building Code and the 2017 National Energy Code seemed like the most efficient and streamlined choice. After more recent feedback from the public, there has been a request for a transition period should a new bylaw be adopted. This is current practice at both provincial and national level. Planning and Development has suggested that any changes to the bylaw come into force in effect on January 1st, 2020. Currently, the City of Lloydminster contracts out safety code inspection services. This contract is held by Superior Safety Code, and it is the requirement of their contract to enforce and regulate the building code as adopted by the City of Lloydminster. We have Jeff here from Superior Safety Codes to answer any specific code-related questions. Additionally, Chief Newton is here to answer any code-related questions pertaining to fire. Any questions?
Thank you, Natasha. Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. What code, are you aware of what code we were using prior to 2005? Or prior to 2011, sorry, when we switched to the 2005 code?
1995.
Yeah, that's what I had heard recently. He said the answer is 1995. So, rightly or wrongly, we have a habit so far in Lloydminster as being a community that has the ability to choose our own to be generally pretty far behind the trends. And I don't think it's a bad thing to update this to a more recent version of the codes. This is a standard that essentially everywhere else in the country is held to at some level. I think we are by far the farthest back as far as these building codes go of any, I think, municipality. So, you know, that's not always something to hang your hat on. I realize that may make things cheaper potentially for some builders. But at a certain point, you know, we have to get up to modern standards. One of the things, you know, that was a lot of conversation and a lot that I learned at FCM was related to how, you know, even small municipalities can do their part on things like climate change. Doing something as simple as adopting the National Energy Code, as far as the standards that are involved in there, is a gesture in that direction from where we are right now. So I do not think that it's a bad idea. Obviously, there's going to be potentially some pushback. It's fine with fine with me as far as having a transition period to the projects that are, you know, kind of halfway through or just at the beginning stages right now, that they can be completed within the code that they were started on. That makes sense to me. But at the end of the day, like, this is just really raising the bar up to at least where everybody else is, even a little bit behind, because there's additional building codes that have come up since then. Like Saskatchewan follows a newer, more updated code, although it's less prescriptive as far as I know than the Alberta Building Code.
So the province of Saskatchewan, like I said, the National Building Code, sorry. The National Building Code is written, and then provinces such as Alberta chose to kind of write in some of their own uniquenesses. So the province of Saskatchewan does follow the National Building Code. Based on the 2019 changes to the Alberta Building Code, the Alberta Building Code and the National Building Code right now are fairly unique. Just to add something else for a level of transparency to council as well as to the public, our new bylaw is proposed to be written in as amended from time to time. So every time the province of Saskatchewan accepts a new national building code and a grace period, us as the city of Lloydminster will accept that as well, so that we don't potentially fall this 10 years behind like we tend to.
Thank you.
Councilor Buckingham and Councilor Whitaker.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Natasha. A couple of questions as we're sitting here discussing this stuff. Your consultations, I'm assuming, included folks like the Construction Association. Just so it's out there in the public, what was the feedback generally from the people that this affects in the industry in our city?
Generally, it was debated back and forth. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Sorry.
You're welcome.
There wasn't really a strong push either way. There was an acknowledgement that when we construct in the county, we adhere to a higher level standard, and when we construct in Saskatchewan, we adhere to a higher level standard. So there wasn't a pushback. We actually offered a survey where we said, what would you rather us do, the Alberta Building Code or the National? And it was a fairly even split. Like I said, no preference was really given based on some of the other codes we follow and our previous choice to adhere to the National Building Code. Our stance was, let's stay national.
My second question is probably more directed at Chief Newton than anybody. We're transitioning into a new form of fire service in our city. We're transitioning into a new level of National Building Code. What kind of pressures or what kind of opportunities does this put on you and your staff, Chief, when it comes to, I mean, you can make a law all day long. If you don't enforce it, what are you doing? So how much of this is it going to fall on your plate and your members' plates to inspect preemptively, fire prevention, fire protection, that kind of stuff, if we move to this from where we are now?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Thanks for having me up here again. The building code being updated does provide safer buildings, so generally the demand for fire services from building-related fires should decrease with going with a newer and updated building construction, as well as we did in 2015 adopt the 2015 National Fire Code, and it will mesh nicely with the new National Building Code.
So are we out as a fire service and a bylaw? Are we out actually actively pursuing these things? If we're not, are we going to enhance that service if we make these switches?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So presently, the City of Lloydminster does not actively enforce our fire code. We don't have any policy or QMP in place to manage buildings' compliance with the fire code. I believe this is somewhere where I would like to get our fire services to, and hopefully be looking at that in our new master planning document and bringing forward to council at a later date.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Councilor Baker.
Your Worship, this is a whole can of worms, this whole building code thing. First of all, it's a national fire code, and the climatic conditions, it's all about climatic conditions for the most part. And they vary from Vancouver Island to the East Coast. And I think traditionally going with Alberta, Saskatchewan, at one time we had two building codes in the city. One was Saskatchewan, one was Alberta, and if you build in Saskatchewan, you use the Saskatchewan code, you're in Alberta, and I still think that's the best way to go. Everything down to the threads on your fire hydrants are different. At the end of the day, we received a letter from the Construction Association and/or the president of the Construction Association, Darrell Benson, when this was first brought up a year or 2 or 3 ago. And they wrote a letter and they gave you some examples of how it was going to increase the cost of certain buildings. And I looked for that letter yesterday and I couldn't find it in my file. But I'll try and find it, but it should be, or would be, I think, in the files of the building department somewhere, if they file what they get sent to them. I think that when you look at specialists that work at building energy, there's only so much energy. They've tried double walls. They've tried 2 layers of polythene. They've tried, you name it. And half the house is rotted because they won't breathe. So there's more to this thing than just climate change. There's all sorts of issues. They tried poly on the shingles and the roof sheeting rotted. And it goes on and on and on. And this city was full of it. And builders were forced to follow that building code. So I hope we know what we're asking for before we jump into this. And I think that really a tough consolation with builders with some experience sit in this room or sit somewhere and go through that whole process. Because what works, for instance, on the north coast of British Columbia does not work in Lloydminster. And I've been there many times. So one shoe fits all isn't why I need the answer to the building code. There's parts of this country that don't even have to put eave troughs on houses. In other places, they gotta be 8 inches wide. So that tells you something. So I'm not sure what research has been done, but I don't know what the difference is between the 2017 and the 2019 energy code. I don't know that. And I don't see it anywhere. So what are the upgrades? Are you aware of the upgrades, what that actually is?
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Potentially Jeff can answer some of those more specific code-related questions. There are a few things that, from what you also said, that I'd like to address. The letter from Vexen, we are aware of. We've continued to engage with not only Vexen and not only just the Construction Association, but anybody who's willing to come to our meet and greet events. From our research, most of the cost implications to this change will be associated to the energy code, but the energy code, not necessarily the building code. But the energy code is enforced on both sides of the border, so we feel as the city, we would like to meet the standard that everybody else is enforcing. In regards to the climatic data that's actually written into our bylaw 59/2011 is very much out of date and has many typos in it, so it's not really applicable data. But there, if you look in the most recent National Building Code, in the climatic data, Lloydminster is actually written in its own line. And if we make the change to the new National Building Code, that is the information we will follow.
So what's wrong with the 2017 energy code?
I'm just going to call Jeff up to discuss changes between the two energy codes.
Hi, my name is Jeff Dorr, and I work for Superior Safety Codes, and I am here to assist if you have any questions about the building code, the energy code, both provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan. I'm licensed level 3 in both provinces currently.
Councilor Baker, you were curious about the energy code, if you'd like to restate your question.
Well, the difference between the 17 and the 19.
Pardon me?
2017 energy code.
Yeah, that's what's currently in force.
Pardon me?
That's what's currently in place right now.
Right, and the 19, what do you do to the code to make it the 19? What are you changing?
There is no 19 yet in National Energy Code. The last revision of the National Energy Code is 2017. It's the last date.
It says 2007 energy code, which is based off the NBC effective April 1st, 2009. Oh, okay. It becomes effective April 1st. Okay, the one before that was what, 15?
15.
I'm out of, okay.
Yeah.
My apology, I'm out one cycle here. So what's the difference between 15 and 17, 17, 19? Well, 17 is now 19 and 15 is now 17.
15 and 17
Yeah.
are very similar. They found mistakes in the 2015 Energy Code. They basically corrected those mistakes into 2017.
So what were the mistakes?
I'll give you one mistake I'll give you, for example, was under slab insulation. They called for an R14 value, which is almost 4 inches of rigid insulation under a heated slab. They realized that was a big mistake, so they brought that down to 1.78, which is basically a 1.
I understand that.
That's all they did.
Oh, there's, okay.
Well, there's more, but it was a lot of correction
I
terminology.
gotta apologize. I was getting 15 and 17 and 17 and 19
Yeah.
cycle mixed up.
Okay,
But I do understand the minor slabs.
okay.
It gets too hot. Yeah. Concrete gets too hot.
To reduce, the correction was to reduce the amount of insulation required in there. And there was corrections on climate zones throughout the country where all the information comes from the community environment. They give them the climatic zones and what they are to be in each area. And there was a large correction in there, and not specifying us, but more in your between zone 6 and zone 7, which take you in the southern part of the province. But it was a lot of correction, because 15 was the first rollout of the National Energy Code,
I
right?
guess I can ask you as a professional. You've read a lot of these books. Do you think it makes sense, this one?
The Energy Code? Do I think it makes sense? No, but I have no choice. As a building inspector, I'm only told what to do.
No, I didn't expect you to say yes, tell the truth.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But we're surrounded, like it's in Saskatchewan, it's in Alberta. It's time to get,
But you can have a made in Lloydminster system if you want.
pardon me?
You can have a made in Lloydminster building code if you want.
If I had one, it'd be the 2015 National Building Code. Yeah,
But we can have our own code,
not that I'm
for the
aware of.
most part.
Because provincially, even if you're looking at the uniform building standards, I mean, use Saskatchewan for example, but the Safety Codes Act in Alberta does say the same thing. As of this date, this code is enforced and throughout the province.
Every time they make these changes, it just adds money to the cost. Usually.
Yeah, cost.
Good thinking.
Any other questions or comments for Natasha or Jeff?
Remember, houses cost that $1 million. Just the rates.
Anything else you'd like to add, Natasha?
No, we were just going to further reiterate, as previously stated, that as of today, the County of Vermilion is following the 2019 Alberta Building Code and the 2017 National Energy Code, and the RMs are following the 2015 National Building Code and the 2017 National Energy Code.
Okay, thank you. That's what I noted, and I'm glad you went back to that. So the spec that the administration is recommending is going to the 2015 National Building Code and 2017 Energy Code.
Correct.
Councilor Baker, to just go a little further to your comments about the Construction Association, I believe I have a meeting with administration tomorrow with the Construction Association, and we will be discussing this further.
Would you do that?
Yeah, I certainly will. Yeah, I just want to bring that to your attention, and council's attention, as well as public's attention. We do communicate with the Construction Association on a quarterly basis, and we can vary
It
that.
came directly to me from Bexon Construction.
Yeah.
I can be quoted on that.
Yeah, no, I do remember, I believe we saw that letter as this council back a year or two ago, and certainly I do understand that it does affect cost. I think that we have an obligation to ensure that we give the residents the best construction. And I hear what you're saying about building, having our own construction code. The question I'm afraid to ask is, what would that cost? And would the builders be prepared to absorb that cost? Because as a taxpayer, just putting that hat on, I wouldn't expect that our taxpayers would have to flip an X number of dollar bill to build our own building codes when they can look and say, what's wrong with the National Building Code? And I understand you know this business very well, you've been for 40 years. And by all means, that brings up a whole issue amongst some other folks that build those building codes. Are they?
Good luck to you, sir.
Yeah, it changes. So I think that we want to try to find that middle of the road that is the best value for our residents and our consumers of the construction, but at the same time, ensure that our construction folks can build a building and not be outpriced. And I think it's important we keep up with our neighbors, be it on the Saskatchewan Alberta side, because the last thing we want to do is we we have some excellent advantages, but I hate to be at the building code, we were slacking off something that everybody else was looking at. Because at the end of the day, certainly the fire code is one that comes to mind. The energy code, sounds like they've made some improvements, I don't know it well at all, so, but, you know, we know that no matter what code we build to, it's not perfect, and that never has been in every building, so. Any other comments? Thank you very much for passion, actually appreciate it. With that, I will look to inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a media request for yourself, Mayor Albers, Councillor Monroe, and Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you. I will look to council for direction on recess. Councillor Buckingham, motion